It's 23. Where's the one?
Are you ready? All right, good evening, everybody, to the call to order special meeting of the Bridgeport Board of Education. Today is Monday, April 21st, and it is 6:32. We have a forum. In attendance, we have Jen Perez, the board chair, Bill Kolovix in person, Maritza Echeverria Menace, Rob Traver, Willie Medina,
That's it.
Point of order,
Dr. Agerfree.
gentlemen,
I'm sorry, we're getting started. We're getting started.
the meeting's live.
I'm sorry.
No worries.
We're getting started. Dr. Avery's here. Mr. Nichols here. Nick Russo, Jody, and
Yeah.
Aaron. We have the forum, so we can get started. Today, the item on the agenda, oh, hi, Sam. Sam's here as well. Here have the, today, the agenda item, sorry, is the, fourth full board training session, facilitated paid, and this topic is on finance. So. Yes,
Give them a little. Wow, how you go over cost of the post here.
we have five.
We have, so, I'll just bring us to order. We're very fortunate tonight. This is the session on finance. And I do, before we do that, just one little bit of housekeeping to plan to see, the final meeting, which was, I believe, June 16th, is going to be with, Chris Horan, who was formerly the communications person for the Boston Public Schools. He can't make that night. He thought he might be able to zoom in, but I don't think that kind of meeting is going to be as helpful if it isn't in person. So we are going to have to try to reschedule. We'd always allowed for some flexibility toward the end anyway. So hopefully between Danielle and us, we can work on finding an alternative meeting for that. The other thing I would point out is that we had stressed at the beginning that all of Cave's time is part of the dues, but if we had to bring someone in for a fee, we'd have to talk about that. And there will be a fee for Chris. I'm meeting with him, we are on Zoom, Thursday, and we'll have better idea what that might be, but there might be some expenses for him to come down from Boston. But knowing the experiences he's had, both in a large city and also working directly with the board for communication, there's a lot of that work. I'll stand behind. It will be a very helpful session for you. So we'll add more information as that goes on. But I want to just plant the idea that we'll have to work on that last thing. So again, tonight, finance, Ed Aram has been, well, we've both known Ed for a very long time. He's a member of the technical assistance team working on your finances. Frankly, we couldn't come up with a better person to actually help do this work tonight. And so without further ado, we're going to turn it over to Ed and let him walk us through the work that he's doing to help you get a better sense of how the board should be doing its work related to finance.
Just let you know, before I start, I'm Ed Aram. I've been assistant superintendent for business for 38 years. Then I retired in 2005, opened up my consulting business. I probably worked with 30 to 35 school systems, whether it's building projects, whether it's overseeing closing schools, opening new schools, organizing business plans and so forth. So just right now, I stopped before and then I co-chair the building committee in Torrington for a 7 through 12, $185 million project. We opened up the high school on January 22nd, and I wanted it 2 months in advance, which we did. Everybody wanted it in March and April. We said, no, let's do it January 22nd when the finals are done so the kids can go and move in. You don't have to change the schedule and so forth. And in September or August, the middle school will be there. Middle school now, it's 6, 7, 8 will be a 4, 5, 6 building. What happened was before, former superintendent wanted a K3, 4, 5 with a sister schools. Transportation was horrendous. Kids weren't getting home until 4:30, 5 o'clock in the elementary. So now they're going back to a K3. district. I lived in Torrington for about 46 years, which we can't believe that we're in Torrington for 46 years, coming from New York City. So, and also it's a pleasure working here in Bridgeport. Everybody we interviewed has been open and honest with us. We also met with the mayor today, while we interviewed a couple of board members. So getting a flavor of this district and the teachers and the unions, so forth, which we have met. So it's a pleasure being here. And I say that with all honesty, because it's really nice to be in a community where everybody is open and honest to us. And we're getting a lot of information. We're pouring it out to people, to the commissioner. We told the commissioner a couple things we want them to do, to take care of, because it could be great communication between the city and the board and the state working together, which we all want to happen. So more my soapbox on that one, but any questions on anything I said before?
That's what the record showed. Mr. Bennigan has also joined the meeting.
We appreciate your, I couldn't believe it. He says to me, I'm gonna have lunch for you guys. Yeah, right, okay. And he had lunch for us, so I really appreciate
You're welcome. So thank you for everything you do.
and we appreciate Avery helping us to get all the meetings together. So first look in budgets. This is, I'll go over this one first. And if you have questions, please interrupt me. If you have questions, if I can answer it, I will. If not, I'll write it down and get back to you. Okay. So the budget is developed to meet the districts. I know you're going through you're going through the mission, you're going through your vision, you're going through community needs and economic realities. Is probably one of the top priorities also in this day of what's happening at the feds and so forth, what's happening at the state. What is the purpose of the budget? Really, it's a financial support for your academic goals, your administrative goals, the operational goals, and align the core values for vision and mission, community needs, and economic realities. Really, what are the systems goals that we want to really just have for a community that the Board of Ed sets up and the superintendent looks at those and goes through those. So it's a very important financial support. Considerations impacting budget bill, unfunded mandates. You know, when I was in what?
Take your time.
We did an analysis of unfunded mandates. It's, you know, whatever you look at one thing, it's unfunded. Everything we do here almost is unfunded mandates. And that's a killer for all communities, not just Bridgeport. Enrollment projections of, you know, in certain communities in Bridgeport and also in Torrington. During COVID, we saw 167 kids come into Torrington. 63 were from New York. We had to go back to the state to get the building bigger because of that. So enrollment plays a very big part, and you should have, which you've done, and I don't know if the state will look at it, the projections that you made causes a problem with schools in case they're not big enough, whatever. Because what happened a number of years ago in a number of cities, probably 10, 15 years ago, they would build capacity so high that they had to give money back. So they were very conservative now, but as long as you have 8-year projections and give the top 8, the 8th year where the biggest projection is, they will fund that they will fund it, as long as it's somebody who's doing it, you know, and maybe an outside company looking at that. Special ed course. The state is right now looking at special ed course because they are so high. The excess cost grant used to be funded at 100%. You're lucky if you get 65% now, because there's only a small pot of money. Used to be 40 million, I think it was. Now I know that the state is going to give Bridgeport additional 1.8 million out of their 8 million that they're supposed to give. So that they're looking at that, but 1.8 million is not the fund, it's not 100% of what you do, you know what I mean? If you submit something which is 4.5 times your annual per pupil cost, you want to get 100% over that. They give you 60%. It used to be 5 years ago, 7 years ago, they got 100%. But now, especially costs are going up, rising, schools, outside tuition is going up, transportation is going up, and it's a problem. Community support, very important that that there's transparency, that you go out to the community, you tell them, you meet with them. In Torrington, when I was there, and you have the budget document, we used to go out to different organizations. When I was in Region 15, which is Middlebury, Southbury, we had an elderly housing project with 1,000 people there. It was Heritage Village. So we would go to Heritage Village. These were retirees who understood what education was, and they would support, because that during Region 15, it was the budget was voted on by the people. Okay, so so community support is so important. General inflation, we see what's going on now with inflation, with costs are going up, and that's a problem we have to look at for inflation. What is that number? Is it 3.2? Is it 1.5? It's important to look at. Rising healthcare costs. I know you're on the state plan. State plan also is rising too. So it's an important. Before the state plan, everybody was in one group, and now I think they're looking at the change what the groups are, because why are we paying for the communities down the Gold Coast when we're not at the Gold Coast paying? So it's important. So they're looking at that now, as I understand. An increased cost for operation and maintenance. You have to keep the schools, open properly, health, safety, and security. So it's important, the operation, what are the utilities, what's happening with also cleanliness, what's happening with the food service. That's a separate budget, but that's another important part of Bridgeport and all lunches are CEP, which means you get a free lunch for everybody, and that helps communities.
That's on a
Yes,
record that Mr. Woodson also joined the meeting.
yes,
Before you turn the page.
Medina, right?
Yes.
Medina. Never
Yes.
met you, but I know that face.
I appreciate it. You mentioned in the, on the support that in the area, you had a location that had over 1,000 people. What was the kind of support, just to get a little insight on what was it that?
Yeah, we would go to Heritage Village, and we would bring our budget, and then we have an open session. Here's the budget, what do you have questions for? What do you have? And they would ask questions. Sometimes we can't answer the question, we'll come back. You know what I mean? It's important. We did that in Torrington too. The principals would have communications in their own school. They had their budget. They would review their budget with the PTOs and so forth. So everybody knew what was going on. I think it was important, especially in Region 15, because the voters vote on the budget. So we have to, give them what the budget is.
I just thought you were coming up with something that they were supporting us, and like they were trying to support the district in a sense. That's what I thought. But it was just to get their understanding of whether on the budget process and get their thumbs up, like, hey, we're doing the right thing.
Also, and I don't know, and I didn't delve into here in Bridgeport, but a lot of those Heritage Village, we brought them in as volunteers. So they're volunteer in the school system, and then at the end of the year, we took it out ourselves. We didn't do it on the budget. I would pay for it, or the superintendent would pay for it. I'd add in the Waterbury paper, thanking and listing all of their names for volunteers in the school system. And that's, was worth the, just letting them know. They would come in and they would read to the kindergartens and so forth. And the end of the year, we would list all of the names in the paper. So it was work. So you have to think different ways, you know, what I mean, you have somebody there with Heritage Village, boom, use that, you know. You got questions?
No, I understood what you meant. We had a fight here on a budget 25 years ago where the fight was, oh no, it's gonna raise your taxes. And the senior citizens in town voted in favor of it because they believed in education. So,
Yeah.
but if you have to have the discussions.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying.
Well, when
It was pushed by, the anti was saying, oh, it's tax increase, it's gonna cost you more money, and their attitude was that they voted strongly to support it because they believed that their children had benefited from it, and they wanted to see other children benefit from good education.
we had to go out for referendum for the 7 through 12 school, and it was during COVID, you know, and we went out during COVID and we passed it 4-1, 159 million. Then the increase in population, we had to go back to them for another 20 million. They passed it 4-1 because they knew it was good for the community. You know what I mean? It would raise their real estate, you know, housing. It would raise their idea of what that housing costs. You know, their real estate property would increase because of something coming in. Yeah.
Director, practice another joint.
Next one is budget development, typical key participants. And we're finding out it's important to have these participants. The finance and the school business official spearheads the budget development. We've talked a number of times. Still talking about.
It's not.
Oh, okay, something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
When we say key participants, it's also a team. Everybody's a team working together. You know? Strong team can help the district move forward. Weak team or what's the problem? So participants, we call that team participation. The finance, the business official spearheads the budget development process, produces the budget document. I have a document that we used when I was interim in Torrington a couple of years ago. We really need that budget document. We really don't have a budget document to give to the principals, the stakeholders, to the board also to see everything. So that's important. Payroll supervisor provides salary projections based on actual staff counts, contractual salaries. I met with the IT people at the city and at the board, talking about the munis modules, which are available to the Board of Ed. It's already paid for. It's a combination with the city and the board for their modulars, budgeting, human resources, on salaries. The city has all that listed, and we want to working with Nestor to hopefully implement something with the budget documents, Board of Ed, and principals and stakeholders. School principals and department heads provide recommendations for non-payroll expenditure line items. This includes not only instructional purchases, but facilities, transportation, and special ed courses. They're in the school. They know what they need. They know the students. They may get an additional special ed student in the district or another type of student that may need additional help and so forth. So it's important that they look at. Also, they're the ones who know about the facilities. So if something's happening in facilities, they should bring that up into a budget, so forth. Superintendent sets an initial vision and ultimately recommends a budget to the Board of Education. that is aligned with strategic goals of the district. He's the educational leader of the district. He'll bring the budget to the Board of Ed, and then he has to defend it to the Board of Ed. And the Board of Ed may have different ideas, and they should bring those ideas up to the superintendent. The Board of Ed reviews superintendent's budget and makes changes that deem necessary before adopting a budget that moves to the fiscal authority for funding appropriations. Should be a two-way communication with the Board of Ed and the superintendent on what, the superintendent says, I need this, why? And there should be a rationale. And then the Board of Ed says, well, maybe we should do this instead. So there should be a rationale, open discussion, which is always healthy in dealing with. And then you have fiscal authority, final monetary approval, authority of the total budget requested by the Board of Education. And remember, they don't have line item veto. They can't touch that. Yes.
For clarity's sake, if there is a fundamental disagreement in the budget between the superintendent and the Board of Education, how is that resolved?
By talking it out, I've been in education, 55 years. Okay, I started in Bedford-Stuyvesant in New York. I started in New York. First day I was there, they had a strike. 1968. Okay, I had to go through, I'm scared and all that, but I was administrator and so forth. But we had to work together after that strike was ended. You know what I mean? Just broke up district. I was in District 17. People have to work together. Everybody doesn't agree on everything. And you have to come out with a idea that we're working together. And people don't remember. It's for the kids. We're here for the kids. We're not here for somebody else. If we forget that, we've lost the ball game, I think.
That's my question really wasn't answered. I'm sorry, may I clarify again?
No, I understand your question. I just,
Well, the superintendent wants to spend $5 million on a program, and the board wants to spend $4 million in a program, and the board makes it clear through a vote that we only want to spend $4 million. How much do we spend on that program? The board's vote controls, correct?
yeah.
Thank you.
You yourself having 55 years experience in the industry, how do you go about giving your opinion to citizen, somebody who has no background in education, no type of education in finance or stuff like that? How do you go?
You make it very simple to talk to them. We used to have coffee clutches, so to speak. Bring them in, talk to them. That's the only way you're going to communicate. Is when I was in Bedford-Stuyvesant, people didn't know about what's happening. So I would go to the churches, and with my wife, who wasn't my wife at the time, he says, "Okay, you're coming with me, okay?" And they would serve food to me, which some of it I would not eat. So it's just, pickles, pig feet. I didn't go there. So, but that's keep with it. They used to call me the mayor of Bedford-Stuyvesant because I was there all the time. They needed me, and my wife who came. So it's I don't know. It's so important just to speak to people, and you know that you're going to get arguments, no doubt about it. But you just try to say what for the kids. If you don't say what for the kids, you build a new building for the kids. You have the new programs for the kids, special ed course for the kids that need it. Get that the kids are there. I don't know what else to say, but that's.
Gotcha.
Our sixth session is going to be on communications, and we'll be spending more time talking about that, answering that question.
Yeah, just dealing with people, it's, sometimes it's tough, they get in your face and you just Okay, let's talk it out. Been on a number of those arguments and, you know, also, what I found also is humor helps a little bit. Okay? To break down the barriers. Maybe humor can help.
A lot of times, you know, we talked about in the last meeting, you know, jobs are on the line. And, you know, what you say, what you do, but, you know, can
Yeah.
lead to your job. So you have to, you know, walk a fine line, fine line. Thank you.
Again, if jobs are online, you know, you meet with everybody, you tell them why, what's the situation, you know. It's important to meet with those people. So,
I mean,
sorry.
no, thank you for that answer, actually. I love the simplicity of it, of just the simple communication as far as the answer that you gave. On the board education, point here, the bullet point, because this is my second year on the board. And in that section it speaks about review of the superintendent's budget and makes changes as deemed necessary. Since you are the expert, there's no doubt about that. How important is that? Because I know I missed that opportunity last year, and I just want to make sure I kind of understand how important is that part of this creating a budget,
Yeah.
if that.
Yes, it's very important, you know, and that's why when I spoke to Nestle today and superintendent, we want to get a budget document that is readable, understandable, that is what the mission goals and the core values of Bridgeport are. You really don't have budget document that a principal can look at, give their ideas, that special ed can look at, give their ideas. There's no budget document, really. And once you have a budget document, it lists the priorities, it lists there so now the Board of Ed can see it. And if they don't like X or Y, why? What's the reason?
If the superintendent's coming up under budget or on budget, should it be contested about everything that's on there?
Well, there's gonna be contention, no doubt about it, but I not, well, how do I put it? It should, you know, the superintendent knows what the vision and mission, the core values of the students in Bridgeport are. And he would present the budget that way. Now, the budget may have more money for one item that the Board of Ed may not agree with, they want to cut it back. So there's a discussion of that. But, you know, it's the superintendent's budget until it goes to the board, and then the board has their idea of what it should be.
If I could jump in a little, excuse me, you have the superintendent should be able to share with the board what the costs, what the cost of certain things are in budget, or all things in budget. A great example would be something again that I've experienced. You know, it costs you $1 million for energy costs in your district. Let's just call that $1 million. So if you look at the last year's budget, it was the superintendent district spent $980,000 on energy costs. So you're looking at inflation and other factors that are definable factors and saying, I'm anticipating $1 million. If you're going to budget less than the $1 million, you better come up with costs or cost savings. So at that point, you're working with an energy company, you have strategies, but they're real strategies. The board's voted on them, and you can rely on the fact that you're going to cut the $1 million to $800,000. That's your strategy to get to $800,000. What happens often with budgets is boards of ed, superintendents, school officials want a greater percentage of the pie to go to teaching and learning, instruction, new textbooks, new programs, new technologies. They don't want to spend $1 million. But you have to budget the $1 million because that's what it costs you to run your district's energy program. So what boards mistakenly do is say, you know what, we don't want to reduce the teaching staff, the personnel staff. We don't want to cut a program. So rather than cutting
the program, they'll cut the energy costs without a strategy to $800,000, $700,000. So then you get into January, your energy budget is through the roof. You don't have the money you didn't allocate the money for that energy account. And now you're $300,000 over budget. And you have half a year to make that $300,000 up. And now what do you do in terms of making that up? You staff, you furlough, and you do all those other reactive modes. So the tension point often between a board and an administration will typically be the board desiring to do good things for kids. And the administration is often saying, but we have these other costs we have to pay for unless we have a strategy to cut into those costs. So that's where a lot of those conversations go.
It really to your question, Joe, a little bit. The two words that I think are critical, if this is all going to work, are trust and communication. For a whole bunch of reasons, which we don't need to go into, there's a breakdown in trust right now between the board and central office, and it's not for people in the room. This is just, that has to be restored in order for when the superintendent comes to you and says, this is what we need. We need $5 million for this project. He needs to be able to explain to all of you why it needs to be $5 million. If the board then turns around and says, well, we think it really needs to be 4 for all the reasons Jody's talking about, then you have to have that communication. Dr. Gravy would sit there and go, but this is why it needs to be 5. And you say, well, this is why we can't. And that's to Ed's point. We have to have communication because yes, in the end, you could say, you know what, 4 million, voted it, that's what you get. But if we don't have the communication, then it becomes perhaps, I'm trying to think of the word, but it's not a planned decision as much as a reactive decision, to use Jody's word. So that's where the communication comes in. And then where the chips lie is where they lie at the end.
Yeah, I got this. It's not really, well, for me, I'm probably the only one sitting here that actually voted on cuts with another superintendent. And I had a great relationship. We had Dr. Orsta Johnson. It was not a trust and communication issue. There was a disagreement in a value system of what to cut. Superintendent had wanted to access the science director and another position. I advocated to save those positions, which are still in existence today. And we had a great relationship. It wasn't a lack of trust. It wasn't a lack of anything. It was just a lack of a difference in approach. And I rallied up the 6 votes for that one. And they remain today in the district. So it's not only a lack of trust, it's just a lack of difference in vision that will happen at time to time between the superintendent and the board.
You still need a level of trust to hear each other.
Correct.
And then make a decision, what we ultimately, what a majority of us feel is in the best interest.
Yeah, and it just also raised that up to say, it's not unusual for a board of education to change a superintendent's budget, especially during times like this when we're cutting. Especially during times like this. It's unusual for a board not to give inputs and not make a single change or not propose a single change in the budget as presented to it.
But again, and I don't want to take
That's
it,
fine.
but our district got hit with a 10% cut, and that's a literal 10% cut. Our 1988 budget was 23 million, our 1989 budget was 20 million roughly. We lost like $3 million. We came in zero, they cut us 10% back when they could. We went to the superintendent and said, come to us with recommendations. And because it was so severe, we didn't second guess those because we had trust in him to make the decision in the best interest operationally, because he's got to, I'll use the term problematic, he's got all of the things going at the same time. Back to the spinning plates that we saw in that little video clip. He's got to make sure all of these things are working at the same time, whereas each of you may have individual priorities. In our case, it was so severe, and again, different kinds of money, but same kind of percentage. We didn't want to start second guessing that. And so we made the cuts we had to make. They were horrible. But at that point, we said to the superintendent, you have to help us get out of this mess. And we trusted his recommendations. Did we cut people we thought we should keep? Yes. Did we save people we thought we might? We had the same thought process you did. But in the end, it was so severe, we said, you've got to run whatever's left. We want to trust you to do that. That takes a leap of faith. And again, if, to your point, if we get to that point where there's a disagreement, it's who has the votes. So, and I think that's really what you wanted to clarify.
Yeah, absolutely.
All this, yeah.
I just want the record to show that Ms. Casper is also here.
I have a question. Back in 1989, was part of your method for saving money, like begging or advocating to the state for more money? Was it just the situation was so severe, did what you had to do and?
That was the year of recession and the state severely cut their money to us, which is very similar to here. ECS or the equivalent, whatever ECS was back then, was cut significantly. The town basically said, we're not passing on, we're not assuming that the difference in price, which is why we got that cut. They did not fund. So, it's sort of but again, it's kind of similar. The state has cut back and, you're trying to figure out how to make up the difference. In our case, the town said, we're not making up the difference. It's going to come out of your budget. But, in fact, I'm here probably for anything as much because I got very involved in the advocacy part of it through CAVE and through Bloomfield, working very hard to try to get everything we could. And we got some, but it wasn't enough overall.
The next one is assessing and addressing student district needs. Enrollment projections used to project staffing and resource needed for general education and special education. Who's coming in? What's the projection? Who's leaving the district? Who's over 21? So we don't have the special ed of 22 now. Kindergartens, they change the age to 5 and certain dates. So projections are very important every year to see what's going on and where are they living in projections, because they could be living in one part of town and so forth. That increases the enrollment at school.
You get projections, whatever the projection would be, up or down. How firm is it that you go with those projections? If you do a study, you pay study.
Yeah, somebody's coming in doing the projections who has been doing them for other districts and so forth. It's important that they're probably almost, correct in what they're doing. We had to do that in Torrington. And then COVID hit, we had to look at it again, and now the projections were up. So projections are very important. It depends upon also with COVID, who thought that 167 kids would be coming to Torrington, 63 from New York, so projections are very important every year, and also moving the students from one building to, from 8th grade to 9th grade to the high school, how many kids are going there? You can almost see that movement. And that's done in-house too a lot. How the eighth grades move school and so forth. It's if your projections are wrong and the state doesn't look at that, you can have overcrowding schools. That's it's happening in Bridgeport. So, and superintendent and the board has to look at that, see what's the best plan to help. And we're trying to help with the commissioner on doing some of that.
Projections to go down.
Well, in some of the high schools, it's not going down. Yeah.
Some of them were built too small. It had no,
Absolutely.
Yes. That's,
I think that was 7 superintendents ago.
oh,
We just,
you're right. Projections that were given, as I understand it, given to the state higher, and as I understand it, they took the lower amount, which that, in that time also, had different people running that office who are no longer there. There was a problem with that office. So happens that just a sidebar, I was in that office. Telling them about our increase. He gets a call because the last time everybody saw him, fired him that day when I was there. You had,
And as you pointed out, that was the state not taking for local projections. We've had a history of that within Bridgeport, of giving the state our projections and having the state reduce those projections so that we have small high schools that are sufficient to meet our needs now, because they didn't take our projection, they went with a lower number.
we're trying to work through that with the state. I don't know if you wanna tell them that.
absolutely.
Yeah, so I've been on the phone and with Zoom with the commissioner and with Charles Hughes, telling them that we need this waiver for 1 year, okay? And again, today, on the phone with them, I gave them the email that was June 1st, 2021, that gave you the waiver in 2021. So we're working on that. Also, I presented to the commissioner, that was one. I said to the commissioner, why don't you come down to Bridgeport? There are many things that are worthwhile to look at. One is when you open up the new registration at Housatonic, that's probably one of the best things. I think it's one of the greatest things, and the woman there who runs it, we interviewed her, unbelievable. I'm sorry, I don't know her name. You know, she's married to Jeff. Yeah, so really great. Come down and look at that, because every district used to have to do, each school would do it, and there was always a screw up, no doubt about it. This is now in one place. Do it. It's really an important.
One stop shop.
Right, and it's really good. The other thing, which unbelievable, you had a student who got into all four academies. That's unheard of. You know what I mean? So there's things, and we talked to, and I'm terrible on names, sorry. We talked to the communication people. They're out there doing that communication. So I'm sorry about that. Jim and Dasarlo. Yes, yes. So we're working. The three of us are working for the benefit of the kids in Bridgeport. And if we have to tell the commissioner one thing, or we have to tell Avery one thing, we're gonna tell them, because it's the best thing that we can see, you know, and hopefully the commissioner will come down. We talked about security, fantastic security here with the police and the Board of Ed working together. So and you can't discuss that in open session anyway, but it's important. And when we also, special ed, the teachers, we have, they're gonna have 14, hopefully, teachers be able to take, and the Board of Ed approved it, which is great. So now you have 14 teachers. They get everything done in the summer. The special ed teachers. There's another one. We're trying to work through the MOU so that regular ed teachers who have special ed can or regular, they could be an English teacher, but they also have special ed certification. That would help district. So we're looking at everything to help the district. And we appreciate Avery helping us with the MOU and stuff. But if there's something wrong with district, we're gonna tell them. There's something wrong with the state, we're telling them. That's what we're here for, to help. People may not like it, but the truth is the truth.
House that is free.
Wow.
And it's house that is free.
Yes. Don't talk to my wife, she may not. So also staffing costs, you know, it's almost 80% of the budget, staffing costs, salaries, benefits, and the levels of where they are. So that's staffing, operational costs, transportation, facilities, utilities, technology. Here's another thought that we had. We met with the We Transportation. And this is just the top of my head because I've done it before. They don't get paid until November because of the routes and so forth. What we tried to do in a couple of districts is, okay, we know that whatever the contract is, the contract, why not pay them over 10 months? Okay? And get I wouldn't call it a rebate, but a discount of that. So even though, you know, they're looking at the routes routes, so forth. If you give them 10 payments, they'll give you a discount. And then we can every month look at, did we make a mistake over the years and so forth? So that's a thought that we've had that, because they don't get paid till November after the first bill is submitted. And it's, can be a hardship. So just a thought. Program evaluations, review of current programs and potential new initiatives, including academic and extra. Budget timetable, annual cycle. Planning typical begins in the fall and approval process ends in late spring. But the timing and the process of that varies from district to district. Key milestones, budget kickoff, school and departmental submissions, multiple review points. Superintendent recommends to the Board of Education. Board of Ed recommends to fiscal authority that is ultimately responsible for funding the group. It's a continuous open communication with everybody. Board members' responsibility shall provide an appropriate learning environment for all students, which includes adequate instructional books, supplies, materials, equipment, staffing, facilities, and technology, equitable allocation of resources in schools, and proper maintenance of facilities, and a safe school setting. Board members' responsibility, the budget process starts with identification of priorities. The Board of Ed plays a critical role in working with the community and administration to identify a district's vision, mission, and goals, and you're going to discuss that next session. Superintendent's responsibility to collaborate with district leaders to design a fiscally responsible budget that ensures equitable and developmental appropriate education experiences between schools, a safe and clean learning environment, fulfills statutory obligations, and allows for advancement of Board of Education goals. Does the board support budget adoption? Identify, discuss, and resolve difficult or controversial issues early. So we know there's going to be something coming up. We want to let the board know that it could be an issue out there. Demonstrate values of linking goals and program goals to cost. What does it cost us to run a building and so forth? How can we link that? Work with administration to identify pragmatic or operational efficiencies that are good. Can we save money on energy? Have we looked at, are you doing light repairs, changing lights, saving money that way, saving costs and so forth? Have we looked at other grants that are out there that could be used to bring money into the community? Work with administration to identify, seek unanimous, if possible, board member support for adopted budget. Educate the community about the value in budget. Public funds cannot be used to provide information that urges support of the budget, but can be used to provide instrument. Does the board support budget implementation? Annually adopt a fiscally responsible budget that supports the work through appointed board finance committee to review and monitor finances on an ongoing basis. So if you have a budget document and you have this programming that gives you monthly financial reports, that's how you can ask questions. Why is this, usually it's 20% of the budget this time. Well, now it's 60%. Well, we want to know why the difference is so important. So it's important to get, we're working with Nesta to get those things on units. So you would have monthly financial, and also each principal and stakeholder would get their budget and say, okay, here's my budget. This is what I've spent so far. This is what, they would get a budget for the beginning of the year. And each month they would get a report showing where they spend their money. So,
And can you talk a little bit about the process that you're being used now in the district on how that's calculated or not being calculated in a manner to where the board would be equipped with that information? I do want to state that, things that we do in this district is all manually done. There's no electronic system that has the capability of providing those accurate reports on a consistent basis right now. So that's, he talks about that, but when you talk about what we're doing in that process, we're not doing that. We can't really give you that information in a timely manner because the system is not set up that way. We do everything manually. Each department has their own way of doing it and they do it manually right now.
That's why we met with the city, because the modulars are there for the use of the Board of Ed. It's no cost to the Board of Ed because the city bought them all. So what happens now, we asked the IT director, Jeff, we asked him, what's your budget? It's 25,000. Says, you can't have a budget, 2019. You know, that's my budget. It really is. He doesn't know what he has. The bill comes in, it's paid. You know, I mean, there's no, get to it later, encumbrances, you know, requisitions. And that's what we want to, with Nesta, we want to bring that into the district, requisitions and purchase orders and so forth. And it would all be on Munis system and so forth.
That's what I'm supposed to say, just from my experience, it's standard practice where the board budget would be on the towns or the city's Munis system. It's not an unusual thing to be looking at. It doesn't mean that they would have control over your budget. It's just would mean it would be sitting in their Munis system and you'd have immediate access to your budget to help you with forecasting and determining where you are currently with all the object codes.
But when you look at historically the last 12 years of the district, how the district has ran, it was all controlled internally and no one had access to any budget other than the CFO, the district, and the superintendent, you know, over the different superintendents over the years. So I think what has happened is historically the CFO pretty much controlled everything, every aspect of the budget. And no one really had insight as to the yearly progression, projection, you know, of how you analyze that budget. And so when you do that, everything else is limited, you know, when it comes to progress of, I need a program to help develop my English language learners, and we need to budget $80,000 for this program. No one had control of any of that in the district. And so that's where you have issues when year after year after year, it was controlled that way. And no one saw the benefit of evaluating the program to see how effective the program was. If it wasn't effective throughout that year, then you looked at doing something different.
Yeah, from a superintendent perspective, how do you hold your language arts department accountable if you budgeted $1 million for that department and you've used $800,000 of it for another program that had nothing to do with language arts? So you want your language arts director and that department to have control over the budgeted money that the board allocated for that department.
And that's a process that the board has to get involved with, not trying to tell educators what to do, but just justify, you know, if I come or department head comes to you and say, hey, we need this. Why do you need it? You know, what are you going to use to do it? And how can you guarantee the board that it's going to be impactful to kids, right? So that's the process that we have to do more of as board superintendent relationships as we develop this whole new process that we're going to do. And he talked about the document. We don't have a document to follow, for you to follow, for principals, directors to follow. We don't have that in place right now. And so when we rebuild this thing, we all have to come up with that process. So you guys are clear, we're clear, principals are clear, teachers are even clear. This is what's going to happen, and the time of year is going to happen.
If I wanted to see Westport's like their bargaining unit contracts and stuff, and I go on their city website, I should be able to see it, right? But I don't think Bridgeport is capable of doing that in any department.
It does. If you go, if you go to the city website, all the contracts
You can see the union contract.
all the
Yeah.
contracts are up,
Right on the website
including the way
for years.
including the way transportation contract. A lot of
So-
things are on the city web.
It's
on the-
because-
City website now.
No, on the district website.
But the school board, the education stuff is not on there. You can, like, if I want to see this education budget,
It's there,
it's there.
it's there. The units is published on the district website. By school, drill by school, units, budget allocations are there by school. The only thing, the operational accounts are not, is kind of done on a, what they call pool, meaning controlled by the operational, like office supplies and all those things, controlled by the finance director. Basically, it gives each school their allocation spreadsheet. They put in their request to the business office and it gets processed. It's not online, it's done on a pooled account. So the schools have their operational account allocation. But it's like, let's say it's $1 million or $2 million. Each school is given allocation based on the number of students. Say $50 or $100 per student, depending on the size of your school. That's your allocation, operational account allocation. Then the school will put in a request through form stack, which goes to the business office, which gets entered in units for processing.
Yeah,
It's not an ideal.
document is not there. Okay, you can have a pool of everything, but the school's given $1 million, what is it for? There's no budget document that shows you, for instance, in a high school, if they have Spanish, how many Spanish teachers are in that area? What are the supplies? Maybe they go to a conference, maybe they have textbooks, you know, that's what you should be getting and should analyze on a monthly basis.
Well, some of that does exist on schools. They got school breakdown spending
It does.
on our website.
It does.
But I want to go back to the point where, because they do, every school got a budget
Yeah.
and all the expenditures, you could go get as granular as you want on the school site, see how much textbooks. It is there. It's
Yeah.
cumbersome.
All there.
but it is there.
Cumbersome, all there.
Back to the point about, what Dr. Avery raised, that we do need to get more involved. And so what you raised about the system, which is true, because the example you gave about the English, but the language department using the money, those are line items. As long as I've been on the board and observing the board, probably about 12 years in total, I've never seen a line item transfer voted on. Which is where they use 800,000, there's $200,000 left. They don't need it in that department. What department should we use it on? And then the board will vote to move that $200,000 or add $200,000 if they have a shortfall from another line that has it. And hold them accountable. Why did you ask for $1 million when you only needed 800,000? Why did you ask for 800,000 when you needed $1 million? And that's where the board needs to get more involved. I'd like to see the Board of Education behave more like the city council and not have the budget process one meeting a month, especially when it gets close to budget time and times where we got a big budget. We need to sit down for basically hours at a time and do deep dives and understand what we're voting on. Doesn't kids.
So if you have again, a detailed budget, you can tell, okay, and transfer usually are done, depends upon quarterly. A lot of districts do it quarterly. Some districts do it at the end of the year. Some districts do it every month. That's gets a little too involved. I would do it quarterly, which I had done in the past. But I had a budget that went through the school system. Okay, here's Forbes School. They had a budget. You knew the principal, you knew assistant principal, you knew the salaries, you knew everything in that Forbes district was $5 million just there. We don't do all of that. And that's what we're trying to do here. So everybody has that budget. You can see, XYZ school has $300,000 for math, why, you know, I mean, so. It's important. And when you,
Have that laid out properly, we'll see what was spent the previous year. We'll see what was budgeted for this year, what's been spent for this year up to whatever.
projection.
For, and, you know, then you can ask, you know, Andre, you asked a moment ago, why is this so out of whack, you know? If it's over budget or really under budget. What's going on here? And you can ask the question and say, I don't understand this. And either of our administrators will explain it to us, so we can.
Right, and if you have the documents, there's the, ask the questions, you know, and a lot of times. I knew what the questions would be, because it's the same question all the time, you know, I said, well, that's, again, this is why it is and so forth, you know, I mean. But it's a tool for everybody. When I was assistant superintendent, it would help me out, oh, you're right, and mistake. You know, don't make mistakes. So. Also, we should have, as you do, we have an independent audit comes in, and an auditor comes in and so forth. Ensure total expenditures do not exceed approved total budget year end. Preparation, presentation, create clear and concise presentation materials for the board. Highlight key points, emphasizing important aspects of the budget, anticipate questions. We should have budget books. We should have some PowerPoint presentations. What are the key points? What are the main drivers for budget increases? It could be state mandates that are paid for. What?
Unfunded?
Unfunded. Yeah. I do make mistakes, so thank you. Where were the savings realized to help offset costs? Changes to personnel levels, changes to enrollment, and anticipate some questions. Prepare for in advance for potential questions from board members. Request feedback prior to presentation. Any questions on that? Second one is, what is the school budget? Most we know this, but just re-emphasize. Financial plan outlines projected expenses for a school district. Purpose ensures resources align with educational goals. We want to make sure that the goals and the mission align with what was submitted. Major expense categories, which you know, salaries, benefits, instructional supplies, facilities, maintenance, and utilities. Again, when the number, and I see it all the time, in us, this is the first thing they call if they cut maintenance. Which, why, you know, I mean, the kids are there, we have to look at them. We all do. We all do. Operational costs, facilities, maintenance, utilities, support student support services, counseling, special ed, transportation, capital expenditures, infrastructure, technology. These are just definitions that you all know, hopefully encumbrances, but is that commitment to pay for a specific purpose, future such as purchase orders or contract. If you do encumbrances, whether it's encumbrance for purchase orders or encumbrance for salaries and projections, that helps out. If you don't have any encumbrance for salaries, you know, you look at, well, how do I do it? Well, look, let's look at what each, whether you do monthly or you do each payment, is always 26 days and 52 days, whatever days off for. Then you look at it on a monthly basis. They usually don't change from month to month. They may change a little bit, but you're looking at it each month and you're making sure that the projections and encumbrances are there. So it's important. Expenditures of payment with either cash, well, and I don't even know if you use credit cards. But totally against that, but that's my thing. Projections, a method of estimating an entity's future financial performance. What's the projections at the end of the year?
Thank you.
Budget to actual, the process of comparing a company's actual financial results to its budget on a monthly basis. Also, look at the prior year. if we spent 29 million for something, why are we budgeting 15 million? And why are we projecting 23 million? Something went askew, so we have to look at that. Budget transfers, the movement of funds from one budget line item to another, or from one account to another. Again, look at that because it happens, you know. Hopefully, you know what it is. That's, oh, we saved a ton of money. We saved $200,000 on one thing. Where can we put that somewhere else? So they make that, you know, we need something. It's just like children moving in, they need something, a computer, a textbook, or something. All of a sudden, 10 people, kids move in one school, or they move to another school, so it's important to look at that. Transfers. Now, the new history of non-lapsing funds. This has changed last year. You had, there's 1% and the 2%. And everything had to go to sit in their coffers. Now, the change in the legislation, Board of Ed can put up to 2% in a special account for the Board of Ed. Don't have to go to the, so to speak, the Board of Finance to approve. Now, 2%, up to 2%, the budget as surplus that you can put in your account. And you can set what you want to use it for. So it's important. But Boards of Ed voted to create an unexpended funds account. Board should also develop and adopt guidelines, procedures for deposit into that account and expenditures out of that account.
Just for clarity, the Board of Education Reserve Fund does not really, just for clarity, it does not belong to the city. They're just putting it in the list. The city has absolutely no control over that account. Just for clarity. Up to zero. The city, zero control of that.
Thank you. First point I was gonna make, the second point I'm gonna make, the maximum amount allowed is 2%, correct?
Correct.
What's the minimum required?
Yeah, then,
No minimum required of budget reserves has to be on account.
Well,
I was speaking to this gentleman. He answered my question. Perfectly. Thank you.
go ahead, but prudent financial budget or plan. If others have something for the rainy day fund, let's just be real. Just can't be running down the wire every year.
now, yeah, but if you have up to 2%, you have a 0.5%, you're gonna put it in there.
Well,
Yeah, why not?
this thing is what is the minimum, meaning you don't have to have anything as reserve. That's where he's going.
By law.
That's,
How many districts do you think have about $5 million?
It has to be a big district, but not one of the, I was in, Danbury. Was something, we opened up the account, we had, probably $600,000 in that account.
Yeah, and to balance that out, to either $0.5 million down to $2 million, or force children to walk an extra mile, or to cut paraprofessionals. Those are the balances, so it's not as irresponsible of a move that some would have you thinking. It would
I was just talking about at the end of the year, if you have anything left, it should be in that account, yes.
We're having a discussion about this year's budget that we don't need to have right now, I think.
Yeah.
It's correct. And these two have been asking, debating about how much needs to be left in the savings account. It's a legitimate discussion. But, and you can, you've given your opinion, I think, but.
It's absolutely pertinent this year.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I said legitimate discussion, but we're not gonna resolve it time.
The question was, you have 2%, you have up to 2%. Best practices, internal controls, written policies, separation of duties, requisition and purchase order process, contracts, reconciliations, the accounts, and then the audit. Does your district have an established process for requisitions, purchase orders, their levels of approval, of purchase cards, so forth? There will, we will be, shouldn't say we, hopefully there'll be training secretaries, putting requisitions and purchase orders at the school level.
And do it at the district level. Any requisition has to come to someone at central office to put it in the system to get it into play. It used to be, we used to have all these things set up in the district prior to 2012. You know, and then the new CFO came in and brought all that in-house in order to control the spending from the departmental and campus levels. And so it made it very streamlined where all of it came here to be processed. And she controlled all those departments, you know, as the manager of the funds in the district.
In reality,
Not known to the board that was actually happening, because the process worked very, very well over the last 10 to 12 years when you had additional millions of dollars going in from ESSER to where when you control those dollars, you could do a lot with, you know, that internal working system, you know, and you take a lot of that autonomy away from the campus and departmental levels. Does that make any sense to you? It probably don't make any sense to you guys because you probably wasn't involved in the process.
but in reality, the district, the Bridgeport School District is still using Munis to process all their requisitions. They enter it in form stack. It gets channeled to Munis. It still gets entered to Munis. There's no other system that's used to purchase anything other than Munis. It still gets entered. It's a lengthy process, that I agree.
But it should be processed at the school level.
Yeah.
So the principal sees it, he approves it.
It sends it up to central
Then
office.
it goes central office for final approval.
Well, the principal approves it in form stack. The secretary of the school enters it, and the principal approves it. So nobody's being circumvented here. It's just that to me, it's a ridiculous lengthy added step. The principal still approves it in form stack. The secretary of the school enters it, the principal approves it, then it routes to business office, who enters it in Munis. Then it routes to me. I kind of routed them all to me, anything over $1,000 gets routed to me because I want to open the requisition, see the item they're buying, and I reject it. So
But you're supposed to. That's your job.
it's a lengthy process, but
Acquisition was done at the business office. It should be done at the school level.
I agree with you. It was done at the school level, but through form stack. It's an unnecessary added step. I agree.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I didn't quite understand your timeline, that's all.
Okay.
Yeah, the ESSER money hasn't been intended that Marlene implemented that when she came here, those changes were made when she came here and done by her under Superintendent Ballas back then. So that system has been, you know, within her domain and sort of under her, the veil of her system and being her system. So now it's being opened up and looked at a little more closely by y'all. So I see it changing and you're looking at how to do it better and different. I get that, but it was not tied into the ESSER money coming into this district. It was.
Exactly. For the clarity on that, I think you're exactly
That's all.
the way I should have articulated that. Yes.
It's just taking out the extra step that was put on, which to me is very unnecessary, very time consuming, very labor intensive.
I haven't seen district that doesn't have requisitions, purchase orders, and they all have it at the school level. And then reports go back to the principal. Okay. Reports are then given to the Board of Ed. That's the process. It's a simple thing. It's not rocket science. You know,
When you talk to principals and directors, that's the way it used to be done in this district, and it was efficient. Things worked really, really well. You know, and that's one of the struggles that campus principals have right now. Because as a principal, the way we were trained, I know all my staff. I know everything that's needed. I know my budget. I know if I lost a counselor and a teacher, I know I have two staff members I'm gonna be hiring. You know, they don't even know that because it's all intertwined in this just made up system that doesn't make any sense to anyone. You know, and that's where we have to go back to the basics to understanding how that's developed. Because most principals were trained the same way. I don't care what state you're in, it's the same way. It's anywhere you go, it's the same way that principals across any university train principals and assistant principals to do the work because it's transferable anywhere. And so that's what we have to go back to. And that's kind of what we're leaning towards right now as well.
It's not any different from the city. On the city side, basically, every department has their operational account budget. There is a lead. There is a lead, meaning that there is a cap. Whatever you allocated on your operational account, if you burn it all or spend it all in one day, that's your business. The system will not go over by 1 penny.
Good question. Since we're on internal controls, we've been calling for, since I've been on the board, for forensic audit for years, and in part because of the concern about internal controls. Is our flawed system set up in effect without checks and balances? For example, can the same person who puts in a purchase order write the check to pay for that purchase order, or is it separated and distant? No, that check and balance is in place.
It's there.
So those checks and balances in place.
We want to make it a little bit different so that the principal is in uniform district, that everybody knows it. It's, there was no. They called me in Danbury, they called me in Wallingford or wherever. This is the way we do budgets. Everybody, Board of Ed, even in Torrington, they call me in 4 times there, and I live there. You know, that's what here, which I gave them, and I'm working hopefully. What I would do also, I would give them a list. Special ed, you know, I mean, what are we spending on special ed and so forth to see who we are, because we're trying to bring kids back and so it's a work in progress here. And I think it'll be great.
So while the principal is concerned with site-based management and concerned about his or her own budget, you also want the principal to be aware of the district initiatives, like programs like special education, the district science program, just so they have a more global understanding of how their school fits in the scheme of the entire district.
And it works. It does, you know. And there's always gonna be arguments, no doubt about it, but arguments that can be smoothed over, discussed, and worked on, you know, I mean, that's what life is, you know. I'll let you, here's a funny story. I'm married the first year, my wife. I'm watching the New York Knicks going to triple overtime. My wife wants to watch The Odd Couple. So who won that debate?
How was the outcome?
Next day, I bought a TV, another TV. And I tried to get tickets for the Knicks. I knew where my friend was, you know what I mean? You have to. It's.
And to finish your funny story, you know, Charles Smith was from Bridgeport.
Oh, yes, that's right, yes. And we're married April 6th, it was 54 years. 6th, it was 54 years. When we got married in New York 54 years ago, 6 inches of snow. I have a picture of it. The next day was 80 degrees. Whatever she says goes, you know. Life is good. I can't complain. I have 2 sons. One's 51. He lives in Atlanta. on radio and TV, 26 years. My other son lives in Seattle. They both, one married a Japanese girl and one married a Turkish girl. So I get biggest thing. So requisition purchases, contracts, sewer authority to sign a contract, legal review, risk management review, conducting risk assessments, cash handling procedure. Do you have clear policies and procedures? Student activity funds, who's responsible, how are the reconciliations performed, and procurement reimbursement check issuance process. Common financial challenges in education, budget cuts and funding shortfalls. Oh, I'm sorry.
We'll have to make that.
Just
the last.
We'll have those.
We'll make them.
Yeah, okay.
There anything in there that they should?
Well, just budget cuts and funding shortfalls, man, reduce state and federal funding, which you're gonna have to do all the time. Impact on staff and programming when you have unfunded mandates again, and critical capital needs maintaining that. And just the last one, the next to the last one, and the last one, I'm just not gonna go over because it's. But here, best practices, financial oversight, and I can go in detail later on. Procedures and controls, set up procedures by which all fiscal activities in the district can be accumulated, characterized, reported.
And a scale of 1 to 10 right now, here's Bridgeport and that. Right, I'm just, because I think this is a lot of the work.
Yeah.
We have to be expected of all of you.
Right.
And, how much work do they have?
That works.
5?
Yes, 5.
Okay.
Safe.
It's safe.
Yeah, safe.
But it means a lot of work.
Yeah. And it's good work because you're helping the school, you're helping the kids. We're here for that, you know what I mean? And,
It's also doable.
yes, right.
None of these things have to be created from nothing. They're all principles and
Right.
processes that exist everywhere.
Everywhere.
So just implementing them here, it's a matter of willpower, but that's all.
It's gonna take time, no doubt about it, and Nestor had an idea how to do it, and I think, he will proceed with that. Once we, so.
And to tie it back to the work is regarding the state, I know that's one of their expectations of all this process between what they're doing at the technical support team and the work we're supposed to do with you, is that they want to see these processes in place. And your role is going to be different than it is at the superintendent level and building level. But ultimately, you have to know that it's being done and they have to do it to your satisfaction in order to sort of get checked off on that.
And that's a huge culture shift because the work is different, you know, not only from the staff side, but from the board side and even the superintendent side of how you coordinate all those things together. That's going to be the toughest part because the shift that has to be made is a shift to a whole different side that a lot of staff that's in the district hasn't experienced. Because a lot of them are new over the last 5 years. We look at the number of people that changed over the last 5 years, you know, so they didn't have that, you know, expertise, you know, to follow through with this whole new change that's happening, you know.
And I think the why is going to be very important, sharing that with the staff. We're not adding new procedures, making it like more difficult. We want to be in better control over our budget and ensure it's going in the right direction. That principals have more authority over their budgets to ensure that students sitting in their seats have better academic experiences.
And we want the board and the superintendent to be proactive, not reactive all the time, you know what I mean? That's the thing. Second one, expenditure oversight. Financial oversight is a key component for all school districts. When you get the budget documents, when you get the monthly plan, monthly assessment, you should ask questions. Why? How come? Why is this double and so forth, whatever?
And do you think that's where they've also forecasting as well?
Correct. Financial reporting requirements, state of Connecticut and the federal reporting requirements to which all school districts must adhere. You have to file at the end of the year, EFS report to the state. That's golden, that one. And this, the Board of Ed does have all of the charter accounts on the EFS system. If you didn't, it would take a lot of time to move those over, but you already have that.
To make sure, I think you're saying that every meeting, we're gonna have this presentation. This sort of summary of where the budget's at.
You should have, during the finance committee, they would get that report once it's set, you know. And it showed, you know, that's.
That's pretty much the financial committee report.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Don't do that.
But it would be, the budget would be finite. This would be maybe instead of 100 pages, it's 50 pages, what it is. Board policy and board role. In general, all school boards have three major responsibilities: develop the annual budget, to run the school system, setting school policies, and hiring and evaluating the superintendent. I leave you with those thoughts, and also, I don't have to go through it, just an idea of what a budget manual looks like. Did we do? Get one for Bridgeport. It shows you principals, they want to do personnel, and then, you know, why? There's a new program, why? You know, I mean, it has to be conversation with that, so.
We don't have to reinvent the wheel. The city has it all, the template. All we have to do is basically forward the city template, which is in minutes, because the board, the principals are gonna enter their budget in minutes. So we just give them the city's manual.
It should be, you know,
It's very
the
straightforward.
dates of when you're having and so forth.
It's all there.
Yeah.
The guidelines are there, the data are there, the process is there. Page by page sampling is there. If you have any question entering, call the finance office. Then we do, on the city side, a week of 2 weeks to the time, to the deadline, or a week to the deadline, we send everybody a reminder. Deadline is this date. 3 days to the deadline, we send everybody a reminder. A day before the deadline, we send everybody a reminder. So 4 reminders, if you don't meet the deadline, the school will shut the system down. Basically meaning whatever your current year budget is gets rolled over into next year. That does not mean you don't get a budget. Your current budget gets rolled over into next.
And just as a kind of a reminder, as we,
Yes.
Well, no, go ahead and finish
I was
this.
just gonna say that the goals that you set, those performance goals, this third one, basically develop and implement a comprehensive budget plan that ensures fiscal responsibility and sustainability for the next 5 years. And part 2, review and update policies that outline the board's oversight of the operational budget, as well as grant applications and expenditures, to ensure accountability, sustainability, making informed decisions that benefit the entire school community. So that's your goals for this. So I think this is maybe a good way of sort of reinforcing the idea that it's doable, that there are people in place to help you do it. And it's just gonna take some willpower and confidence, for lack of a better term.
This might be something that the communications person speaks to as well, around communicating in the why around these major structural shifts.
Absolutely, good idea.
So mine was just a short one, you know, on page 2, you call it the budget committee. I assume that's your finance committee.
Correct.
So, and you start, I see on December 9th and January 13th, your December and January meetings.
Right, because that's the budget process. The Torrington was.
Yeah, same here.
Well, are there questions, comments? We,
My question, but it's a comment, the only thing I can say, you know, thank you. Thank you for being here, thanks for, guidance. Thank you for letting us know what we can do, because that's what we need. Need to be go back and forth, what we need is help, keep forward, as you said, we live for the kid. And I know our parents, the people, community, the whole community is watching us. That's what we don't need to judge nobody, point nobody. What we need is, we have the policy open door with that they bring, come and help us. So what you can help us, what, you know, what we can need, because they know what we need. They were our court state, they know what we need. So that's what we need. And people like you and the other colleagues, we appreciate it. I really appreciate, you know, in special case, you guys did an amazing job. And I'm very, you know, it's fun for me to be you guys here. I appreciate it.
No, everybody, has been, warm to us. They asked a lot of good questions, and they've given us answers that you probably didn't want to hear, that we didn't want to, but we heard it, you know, and that's what we're gaining, you know, and we're working both. Again, we tell what we think to the superintendent, the board, we tell what we think to the commissioner. What we think that they should do, what you should do. And also the positive things. When we meet with the communication people, go out there on a monthly basis, get things going, which they are. We have two young, especially both of them very young, and they know what they do.
They're doing a great job.
Yeah, they're young, so they know how to do, you know.
Full of energy.
Yeah, and they know the media, so it's, you know,
Very well.
yes. I, again, you may not believe me, but I enjoy coming down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I really do.
I really appreciate it.
It's the people have been helpful here. We've been helpful to them. And, ask my two colleagues, they'll say the same. You get the,
And we will enjoy what you will bring down.
Has the team visited any of our schools?
we're going Monday, mostly all of them, next Monday. We met with everybody. And, PJ is taking us, next Monday with, I don't have it in front. We're going to at least 5 schools on Monday. We didn't have a chance yet because we were doing all this other stuff.
Right,
So-
because it's a lot to consider here. And see an actual impact of the realized.
Yeah, we're going to both, both
Some
the old Bassett. We have a couple of elementary schools we're going to.
of the self-contained classrooms I was.
Yeah, well, our third person, David Abbey, has been in most of the special ed classes, the RISE classes. He's been in across the.
Saw classes.
Yeah, he's been around. That's his specialty, special ed. So he's been around in those classes, made any comments, so forth.
You're gonna teach us how to bring our schools down here to Bridgeport? That's, yeah, special ed schools. We need them in Bridgeport.
Yeah, well, we hope Shane School.
You know, Skane.
Skane, I'm sorry. I told you. Skane, not a good guy. Lucky I called my wife dear. Yeah, that's, no, we're going, you know, we want to bring children back.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's the best place in Bridgeport, not at some other, you know.
Yep.
That's where our money is going.
Yes,
Oh, yeah, a lot of it.
leading.
I understand that that's happening in all the districts, it's not only Bridgeport, for that way we get that out of the.
No, but not at third.
We have the biggest district, so we have the biggest number, over 4,000 kids that are going out of district. We love, that's there without saying.
A lot of side conversation, guys. There's too much side conversation. Everybody, too much, one person at a time.
And I thank you for bringing some key words that I like, and I'm a words kind of guy. Words matter to me. So when you talk about, you know, when you say the statement and all of you, talking about the panel, when you use the statement, board approve or board vote, that means something. That means that it's coming to the board, that the communication is coming to board. When you use the word trust, you know, trust is a word it's an action word. You can gain trust and you can also lose trust.
Of course.
So some of the things that have been happening throughout is, people have been acting according to what that level of trust is, you know what I mean? So, if I ask you, hey, can you, give me something or information I'm asking for, and then I don't get it. So then that's something that it breaks a little bit of that trust. So now I got to find another way to ask for it or to require that information. So it builds thing and, that's what we're trying to build. And we've been building it very good since, January because of the better communication. And you guys use that word many times during your discussion of the communication. To be able to have a free chance to do what we're doing right now, it means a lot because then we can understand each other a little bit more, and we can see where we're coming from and believe in our words. Because I think anybody in this board can't say anything about every word that I've used. I've put action behind it, and then nobody can call that to attention because again, that's the way I carry myself. Anybody can talk to me. I'm an open door. You can call me, text me, email me, you can do whatever. But I will speak power to power. I'm here for a reason. I'm here to represent my community, and my community is my biggest voice. And my biggest, like you mentioned, a community team to get the support and let them understand this is what's going on. If you got a better way of doing it, let me know. Give me advice. Hey, this is what we got to do. And I think your visit to your school is going to be, impactful. Bring some tissues. Because it's going to be some sad things. But again, we need to know where we are to be able to move forward, right, to build. So I appreciate your attendance, and I look forward to meeting some of you guys because I haven't had the opportunity that some people have had.
Yes, sorry.
Look forward to knowing it's timing. Oh, look forward to it.
I just heard that.
Thank you. Yeah, just, Tim Stewart's point is correct. We do need to reduce our special education costs. They're approximately $114 million per year, over a third of our budget. And listening to hearings happening right now all day, in special education funding. You know what? We need to bring them back. We need money. We need some of the special education students have such unique needs that we can't justify hiring one person to provide for two students at $200,000 rather than taking advantage of these programs right now. You know who's out here protesting against in-district programming? These out-of-service providers. Right now.
Oh, yeah.
Of course.
In force, about 10 to 1. They're trying to protect their space and trying to protect their profit margins, because unfortunately they see our children as profit margins. Now, if we could build a home, the problem is every single district's gonna be trying to build their own. They'll be competing for the same resources. And right now, as the bill stands, it's only, I think it's $15 million in competitive grants to build in-house programs. For 160 something districts competing for them. It's a tough lift. Hopefully we can do it, and that's the end goal, but I don't think it's a goal that we can reach.
No.
Jody, go.
I took a liberty about, again, since policy is at the center of everything you're talking about. I went through the CABES 3000 series, which is around business and non-instructional operations. And I made a copy of the table of contents, and I also attached several policies that I thought would be model policies that I thought would be within your interest in your discussion. I also heard, I didn't make a copy of this policy, but we do have a policy on non-lapsing educational funds. I'd be happy to share that with you as well. I didn't bring that, I didn't think that would come up, but since it has, I wrote the policy based on the new statutes, and so that's going to be available to you as well. So if you just take one of these, pass it down. If you see anything in this table of contents beyond what I shared with you, please ask me from our policy. I'd be happy to share it with you if you get right away. Policies that I attached are, one has to do with business administration. One has to do with lease purchase agreements. I know that came up, contracts have come up before. So we do have a model policy on contracts that specify responsibilities. And also a model policy on periodic financial report, expense reports. So similar This is what Ed was talking about, it's some policy language to support you. If you, or they already have policy on those topics, this our model policy might help either revise your current policies or inform some new policy work on yourself.
Tony, on this, were any of these part of the ones that I already received or no? I just want to double check. with you.
Brand new.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the add.
Anticipating what Ed is going to be talking about tonight. And you guys are making amazing progress with your policy work. I had a chance to watch you online and, you know, the leadership, the administrative leadership and the board work and your leadership has been outstanding and you're doing, in my view, the right number and the right level of urgency, doing really good work. I appreciate that.
Appreciate it. In fact, he's been great. Mr. Avery's been setting up the team and with, Dominic and all them, so looking forward to it. Thank you.
No, no, moving on to the policy, but, part of the state's complaint with us was we weren't overseeing grant administrations properly. But we never discussed anything about the grants. Does anybody recall that besides me? That we weren't properly looking at grants. That they had called us on the carpet at the very first meeting. That we were not properly familiar with the grants and their administration. It seemed like a reach to me at the time, but I would like to get a little more clarification on that. What do we need to understand besides what grants could be expended for and if they're following the policy and the procedure of those grants? Because that seems like a major point to me.
It's something that they raised at one of the first meetings that we had, you know, with the board regarding concerns. I think it was just more of a far reach, more so than anything. Is my impression of that as well.
And it was also integrated into the training request.
Yeah, I've got that language right here, which might help. The training outcome must result in a new or updated policy that outlines the Board of Ed's oversight of the operational budget as well as grant applications and expenditures.
Right.
So I guess the deliverable would be updated policies, which obviously it's not the writing of it that's important, but the implementation of it. So I think it follows sort of the discussion we've had this evening about there's a lot of pieces in place that have to be put in place, but would need to be solidified through the policy.
Which I could also share policies on that topic. Well,
We can look at that too. I really haven't looked at grants.
Yeah, they had called up, remember you had this, they did come up and they were asking questions about the money and when the money had come in.
The drawdown.
The flow grants, and when the money was coming in and the reports were filed and
What
they
they
tried
didn't
to
say,
answer it, but they didn't spend the time to go through it in any
what they
detail.
didn't say, a lot of those grants were not even approved
That is
yet
correct.
by the state of Connecticut. And so they were just really trying to make sure that they put that picture that there was
That's my.
guys falling for Bridgeport more so than they
It was not developed into a full discussion to look at exactly where things were at. It was a generalized statement that seemed to be made and concluded without looking at the details of where things were at and why. What was the problem with the flow of the cash and why it wasn't being drawn down and, you know, that.
There was also a carryover, okay? But Title I and Alliance, Alliance wasn't approved until December,
Right.
you know?
Right.
and that's what
This was early January. This was early January.
There was limited district.
The problem was with the state, not with Bridgeport.
Yeah, and she was trying to explain that to them, but it was lost in the.
And I think, and because I think the state made a problem with last year's budget and Alliance, because remember, the state has to approve the Alliance budget. So they approved the Alliance budget 23-24, and now you gave them 24-25. Oh, I don't like this budget, but you approved it the year before.
Yep. And they were blaming the district for not drawing down 4 months or 5 months into the fiscal year. The state, you're the one holding the grant. You didn't approve, how come we draw down? I mean, get your house in order.
Was I get a cop, I go on the website and I can get all the grants. And I said the first meeting, I said, where's Alliance? Where's Title I? They haven't approved it yet.
In case if you don't know, some of the grant reviewers come to the office once a week.
That was not,
No, but that is what the other.
Yeah.
It is how it got portrayed was, well, why haven't you spent this money yet? Well, we haven't had the money yet. We're only beginning to be able to draw down on it, and it was like never fully developed is a.
All right, Madam Chair, Dr. Avery, if you will, might I suggest that we reach out for positive affirmation that we in fact did check off this box, or if we have not checked off this box, what would be sufficient actions for us to take to check off the box to satisfy their.
I think we're already in compliance with that already. I mean, that's one of the things that we pushed as soon as the grant was approved.
They've already approved it.
We've already started to.
They've approved it.
Well, no, I'm not speaking of development grant. I'm talking about the board training and the board issues around this that they brought up as the reason that they're interfering with our business because we weren't properly overseeing the grants. I want to make sure that box is checked and later that they don't play gotcha.
Well, one thing I do on my end is again, share with you some model policies related to this topic, so you can determine if you have policy and around issues around grants that defines your approach. And if you, I think if you have a policy or policies related to this topic, you can at least point out that we have policies that guide our practice and we are in compliance with the administrative tasks that are required to draw down on these grants.
Okay, so, you actually might get a little early tonight, get out a little early. What I would like to do is, just set up our next meeting a little bit. The expectation of the state, as I understand it, is to really, formalize those performance goals. If we're going to, the board vote to pass those Monday. So, we'll focus sort of that part two of sort of trying to flesh out some of the activities that will revolve around that. And then the second part, while your first goal is to create a vision, we can start having that conversation as well and to start framing out sort of maybe the why of what you're here about. And then from that, we'll go into more of the process by which you want to do that. I don't think it's fair to expect anything that you'll have the goals, but we can work toward setting you up for success with that. But I think it starts with, because when the state keeps pushing us to performance goals, so I want to really make sure that's defined in a way that there's no argument from them. You've got the plan, you've got the action plan in place, and you're working toward it. And that will include, part of that work is establishing the district goal. Because as we've heard tonight, we've heard regularly, a lot of this doesn't work until you've got a really good, clear district vision. But, I think all this work has been to set up so that that can be successful too. And the only other outstanding thing is just, we have to work on that last date and we can work about it.
Yeah, we have a board meeting that month, so maybe we get to swap dates.
I'll have a better idea when he's available, but if we try to stick to the Mondays, that would probably help.
June 9th is the other.
June
Monday.
9th.
Yeah.
We'll talk to him Thursday and whatever, Thursday. June 9th.
The 17th, 16th work as well.
The 16th is the original date that you're checking.
Yeah, that's the date you can't make. And we had a little latitude if we go a little later, because we had to have it by the end of the month, but I'm gonna work on the 9th and see if we can get that for him.
So the 16th is not gonna happen, just so I'm clear?
Correct.
Yeah, we'll probably, if we do the 9th, we can put our board meeting on the 16th.
And, it's about communication, but it's the kind of thing that doesn't lend itself well to is because he offered to Zoom in, but so much of the conversation is about talking to each other and such. I don't think it's a good mix. for him, so, with that alternative date, we'll work on that.
Any further questions? Action plan for good to like begin.
Flesh out with the, kind of, you know, what does this look like?
Oh, okay, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Holiday, seconded by Mr. Benninger, all in favor? Any opposed? You guys, meeting is adjourned at 8:22.
Oh, they should have.